Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today I have a new ferret educational video for you today, and it is on how much ferrets cost, how much I spend on my ferrets every month, and how much you should probably have set aside before getting ferrets. There's going to be a lot of numbers in this video, so get out your notepad because it's going to be a lot of information. And again, the biggest thing that I can say before starting this video is that these numbers are going to vary greatly depending on where you live, where you get your ferrets from, the veterinary care and access to that you have in your area, the diet that you feed, and more. So this is just a very base guideline. So before I go into what I spend monthly on my ferrets, sort of like their maintenance costs, I want to go over the startup costs of having ferrets. I know I've kind of talked about this in previous videos, but it'll be nice to just have a video that has everything together on how much it costs to maintain ferrets as well as obtaining them in the first place. There are a couple different ways that you can obtain ferrets. Now, the first being adoption from a reputable shelter or rescue. So the cost to adopt ferrets is going to vary, of course, depending on the shelter. I got Momo and Appa together from a shelter nearby, and their cost was about $200 USD, but it can really range anywhere between 80 to 100 per ferret, or even more or less. The nice thing about rescuing ferrets from a shelter, they will have been vetted prior to you getting them, so they would have already been cleared by a vet. They would have gotten whatever vaccinations are required in your state. Purchasing ferrets from reputable breeders is also going to vary, and that is a word that you're going to hear me say a ton during this video because it is true. But I did go on Instagram to ask those of you who have gotten ferrets from reputable breeders how much you spent, and it roughly ranged from about $200 to even $400 to $600 depending on the breeder. These ferrets have also been cleared by the vet, and they also should have the best of the best bloodlines. If you go this route, you have a higher chance of having longer living, more robust, healthier ferrets. Purchasing ferrets off of Craigslist or Facebook is also going to be different depending on the situation. Some people want to rehome their ferrets for a high fee, moderate fee, or even free. I will say though, please try your best to haggle a price down if it's really high, because there are flippers out there. They will try to make a profit out of rehoming animals for a huge fee. They don't have to be completely honest as far as the ferret's health condition, current state, and its vet records or lack thereof. So you really need to be careful. There are many lovely people who do rehome animals through those websites, so it's not always bad, but you just have to be really careful. You might end up having to pay a lot more than what you were initially planning. And lastly, you can get ferrets from a pet shop, which is something that my channel is very big on discouraging, because purchasing ferrets from a pet store does fuel the pet trade. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. It's actually quite a sad system. But if you do end up getting ferrets from a pet store, I know my local pet store that sells ferrets, they're going for about $300 per ferret. And these ferrets will absolutely require veterinary care up front, so you do have to plan on spending quite a bit, which we'll talk more about later, on vet care right after getting a pet store ferret or two. And remember, most ferrets do better in pairs or groups. 3 is a really good number. They have been bred to be social animals. There are, of course, ferrets out there that do not prefer to have other ferret companions, and that's fine. However, that does not apply to the majority. The majority of ferrets do prefer to have other ferret companions. In fact, they can become very depressed without them. I want to take those prices that I gave you and double them or triple them. Some rescues will give you like a multi-pet discount. Now we move on to the supplies that you should have on hand before getting ferrets, and this is going to be the most extensive portion of this video because there are some things that you need to get. It is not a whole lot in my opinion, however it is pretty crucial to have these things. And the first thing on this list is not actually a necessity. It's something that I personally don't have, and a lot of my friends and followers on here do not have, and that is a cage. So you don't need a cage for ferrets, contrary to popular belief. They're actually not caged animals. However, many people do prefer to have a cage on hand, just as like a safe house to keep them in overnight or when they're gone, whatever it may be. But the two most popular cages for ferret use are the double ferret nation and the double critter nation. Some people get away with other cages, but it kind of gets a little dodgy. The sizing is smaller. It's just, these cages are considered a lot better. And these typically run from about $250 to $300, less if you can find one used. So now you have the cage, if that's something that you choose to buy. Now you're going to want to fill the cage. And you can actually make this if you're crafty, and it will save you a little bit of money if you're able to make the fulfilling items for the cage. Fleece liners are really popular, and basically it just kind of covers all the plastic trays and the ladders as well in the double ferret or double critter nation cages, and these run anywhere between $40 to $80, less or more on places like Etsy. That's personally where, when I had a cage in the past, I bought my liners off of Etsy, and that's around what I had spent. And a lot of people prefer to have at least 2 sets of liners. That way, for laundry purposes, they can keep kind of cycling through those. Blankets don't have to be expensive. I'm still currently using the same blanket sets that I recommended to you guys years ago on this channel. Baby receiving blankets are my absolute favorite for ferrets. They just hold up really nice, they're durable, they're easy to wash and clean, and the ferrets like them as well. The set that I got was like $17, and I got 2 different sets so that I can cycle through them. And again, these last a very long time. Hammocks, if you use a cage, is typically what people choose to buy as well. You can make them yourself, or you can purchase them again on Etsy. You can also find them on Amazon, but I prefer to buy them handmade from small shops because the quality tends to be a lot better. And they can run anywhere from $12 and up or less. When I had a cage, I would usually have 2 hammocks. So one in the upper level and then another in the bottom level. Beds don't have to be expensive either, and you can also DIY those. I personally get super cheap beds from places like Walmart. I don't spend a lot, so I try not to spend more than $20 on pet beds for them. When I had a cage, I like to have 1 on each level, so 2 or sometimes even 1 depending on the size, and then kind of use blankets instead. A special tip that I have for laundry purposes is to cover your pet beds for your ferrets in pillowcases, so that way you only have to wash the pillowcase when it gets dirty and not the bed every time. Food dishes you may need to spend a little more on, but they should last you a long time because the quality of the food and water dishes that you use for your ferrets is really important for their health. Avoid any cheap plastics, water bottles. My favorite to use for food is glass bowls, and these can be purchased pretty much anywhere. I found a set on Amazon that has 4 of these really nice sized bowls, and it's about $18. And again, this set and similar sets and similar bowls are going to last you many years. For water, I do use a heavy ceramic water dish, and I have that on top of a meal mat. If you prefer to have their water in their cage with them, you can get clip-on stainless steel crocks. So the ceramic bowls for water, like the one I have, typically runs between $15 to $20, and then the clip-on crocs are usually under $20. I personally do not spend a lot of money on toys anymore. I used to in the past. I used to get them new toys and new stuff every single week. I was really sinking my money into items that they didn't even really end up using in the long run. But I do like to have a couple cat wand toys on hand, and these are pretty cheap, like $5 to $10 a piece. Set of jingle balls, these are typically $5 and under, and that's it. My ferrets are set. I mean, I like having things like cat tunnels and boxes and playthings and rice boxes and all that stuff for my ferrets, but really they're only exciting like on the first day of use, and then unless you're kind of cycling them out every day, they become very boring for the ferrets quickly. So that can be something that you can maybe spend more on later down the line, and instead just kind of get the essential toys that your ferrets are actually probably going to really like. Travel cage, you absolutely need some type of travel cage for transportation for your ferret from wherever you're getting your ferrets from, or just going to the vet or going anywhere. A good quality cage is really important, especially if you're using it in the car in case of an accident. You don't want to have a cheap carrier that's going to just fall apart. From like $40 to $100 more or less, but remember that you get what you pay for. So if you find a cheap cat carrier, it's probably not going to hold up in the long run. Litter boxes and litter and or pee pads, depending on your preference and your ferret's preference. Litter boxes should be square shaped, and you should ideally have one in each corner of wherever you're keeping your ferrets. So if you have a designated room for them, you would have a litter box in every corner. So that would be like 4 litter boxes. In a cage setting, they usually only need 1 on the bottom floor. Any litter that you buy should be like recycled paper pellets and unscented. You can also do pine pellets, not my personal favorite, but that is an option. This may cost around $20 for a 30-pound bag of litter, but that's going to last you a decent amount of time. Pee pads can run anywhere from $15 to $25 depending on the amount that you're getting and also the material. It is a less environmentally friendly version, but it does tend to be a much more convenient method of potty control for pet parents and ferrets. First aid kit. You do not need like a fully decked out stocked first aid kit upon bringing your ferrets home. However, I do strongly recommend having like a base kit ready on hand with items such as Vaseline, gauze, tape, Q-tips, saline solution, quick stop powder, small animal nail clippers, and syringes. During the years of having ferrets, personally, the items that I have used the most in this type of first aid kit is Vaseline and syringes. So definitely make sure that you have those. And then of course, nail clippers you're gonna need as just part of their maintenance. In the future, you may find yourself wanting things like a blood glucose monitor, or rectal thermometers, homeopathic remedies. Plan to spend about $40 on your starter kit. Diet. This is where it is going to vary a lot, and I tried my best to put ranges for any type of diet that you could be feeding your ferret. Please check out my new ebook, Feeding Ferrets Naturally, if you are interested in feeding your ferrets a natural diet. Raw feeding prices are going to depend a lot on your area, the number of ferrets that you have, how much they eat. So I wanted to go over all the different types of raw feeding and sort of the rates on those. The first being frank and prey, which in my opinion and the opinion of many others is the cheapest way of feeding raw. And if you want to learn more about what that means, please check out my other videos, because that's not really what this video is about. In general, at least what I was paying when I was feeding frank and prey, I remember spending about $100 a month for 4 ferrets. So you may expect to pay like around $80, $60 if you have 3 ferrets. The second one being pre-made raw. This is what I currently feed my 5 ferrets, and I spend anywhere between $150 to $230 a month for them. And that does sound like a lot, but this is really, really good high quality food that I'm feeding my ferrets. And I also have 5 ferrets. 3 of them are pretty hefty males, so they do eat a lot more. Ziwi Peak is a great air-dried dry food. One 2.2 pounds bag will likely last around 2 weeks for 3 ferrets, and that's just kind of what I've gathered from the people that I know that feed this food. So that is $56, and for 3 ferrets in the month, you're probably gonna end up paying anywhere around $100. Feline Naturals freeze-dried raw is also a good option, but it is going to be pretty expensive. For example, their largest bag is 11 ounces of food, and it's $35.69 right now. So in the end, you will end up spending similarly to the Ziwi Peak. So those options are very expensive. If it's something that you can feed and you can't feed raw, definitely go for it. An important thing to keep in mind is, while it may seem very tempting to try to cut costs wherever you can, this can be a huge detriment on your ferret's health. The cheaper the food that you're buying, the less quality it is going into your ferret and coming out. If you're feeding your ferrets a cheap brand, a cheap quality food, they are likely going to run into health issues down the line. Food is the foundation of health for all animals. And you will really, really love the results that you will see from your ferrets on a good quality food. Popular ferret kibbles such as Y-Song runs at about $27 for a 5-pound bag, just to give you an example. And it's also recommended to mix Y-Song with a couple different brands because Y-Song is known to be difficult for ferrets to digest, despite the fact that it has digestive support in the name. It's just something that ferret owners have had to deal with. But just to give you an example of why most people feed kibble, is because it is a lot more cost efficient in the short term. However, a lot of us raw feeders like to believe, and just natural feeders in general, like to believe and have seen for ourselves, you put good in and you get good out. Veterinary care is usually quite expensive for ferrets because they require exotic veterinarians to see them, not your regular dog and cat veterinarian, so they are able to charge a lot more. Yearly visits for ferrets in my area run at about $80 to $100 per ferret. Sometimes they will have multi-pet discounts and sometimes they will not. Fecal tests, which a lot of people prefer to do every single year, run at about $30 to $35 to even $40 per ferret. If you vaccinate your ferrets, that might be $20 per vaccine. Many vets choose to administer an antihistamine with the vaccinations to prevent risk of reaction. So that may add on like $50 per ferret depending on the antihistamine and the vet that you're using. I have an example that I'm going to put up on the screen here that was donated by one of my good friends. Please check out her YouTube channel. This is just an example of like the top end, kind of pricey, but normal for her area for 3 ferrets. So I think it's a really good example because it includes 1 vaccine and the antihistamine and the wellness exam, which this vet does not appear to do multi-pet discounts. This is a lot of money, so I figured it would be useful to include in this video. So let's move on to our example family, kind of get some more numbers out there for you. So let's say our example family here recently adopted 3 ferrets at their local rescue. I tried to make this example family as relatable as possible. So in total, they cost the family around $250 from the shelter. And they got a little bit of a discount because there's 3 of them. Because they're getting ferrets from a rescue, they have already been vetted. However, this family, such as myself, this is what I chose when I got Appa and Momo, is I chose to bring them to the vet still, because I wanted to get them established with my local veterinarian, and I believe the rescue did not run a fecal test, so I wanted to get that done before introducing them to my current ferrets at the time. So let's say with this example family, which is similar to what I pay in vet bills, they brought their ferrets to the vet. The vet charges $80 for the first ferret and then $40 for each ferret following. And since the rescue did not do a fecal exam, that is an additional $30 per ferret. In the past, I've paid like $40 per ferret as well. Totally depends. And then also sometimes people choose to only test 1 of the ferrets instead of all of them, because if one has some sort of parasite, likely the others do as well. But a lot of veterinarians will just recommend testing all of them. This example family chose to feed a Frankenprey style raw diet, which is going to cost them around $70 a month. They also bought all of their starter supplies beforehand, totaled about $600 because they did buy a cage, filler for the cage, toys, first aid kit, everything I mentioned pretty much. So in total, with the starter supplies, food for the month, initial vet care, and the price of the ferrets for this example, this family may have spent around $1,170. This number would be less if the family fed a lower quality diet, did not bring the ferrets to the vet upon bringing them home, maybe only did 1 fecal sample for all the ferrets instead of 3, maybe did not buy a cage at all. It all varies is my biggest point. So if that number seems big, the $1,170 seems like a lot to you, probably isn't a good idea to get ferrets, because this is sometimes an amount that you would spend on 1 ferret if you have an emergency at the vet, or even just a normal visit for all your ferrets. And let's say they need the adrenal implant, which so many ferrets end up needing. Let's say that this example family spent this much and then found out a week later that one of their ferrets was showing signs of adrenal disease, which is very common, and they had to bring the ferret back, had to pay the exam fee again, as well as an adrenal implant, which tends to be a couple $100s. This number you may spend more or less, but then you have to plan on an emergency or anything, because emergencies and vet bills and stuff happen when you least expect it. Trust me, I'm still paying off vet bills from Howl and Tanji, and probably even Remy's surgery. I don't even know at this point. It's really important to have savings. You're financially independent before getting ferrets. It's just, they are definitely a money sink, but as far as maintenance goes, which I'm going to talk about now, they don't cost me that much. So month to month right now, after all that starting, and if there's no vet visits in that month, I really only pay for their food, which is around that $200 every month for their monthly meat order from online. That would be a lot cheaper if I was feeding Frankenprey right now, or if I was able to source locally, but because of the meat shortages in the area right now and just the prices of everything, for me personally, ordering their meat online is just a better option for me right now. Sometimes I'll buy them a toy if I'm at the store and I see something that I think they'd like every now and then, but it's not a monthly thing. I don't buy them new beds every month or new blankets. Sometimes I'll need to buy more of their supplements for their diet, but that's not very often. But I hope that gave you a better idea on kind of the amounts of things for ferret care. And this is a big reason why I'm not a huge advocate for kids and just minors in general owning ferrets, because they are a huge financial responsibility and can be a burden. And if you're a kid watching this video, it's not something that you want to put on your parents either. It can be really, really tough on them. I've had many messages from parents over the years. They got the ferrets for their kids, and then the ferrets got sick, and then just the vet bills piling up. It can be thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars every year if you have an emergency, because ferrets are very poorly bred, especially here in the States, Canada, and Japan. So they tend to be a lot more prone to health issues such as adrenal disease, insulinoma. These things kind of come hand in hand if you live here in America. The longer that you have ferrets, you're going to learn more about saving money with them. Over the years, I've learned a lot of different tips, what works, what doesn't work, how to save for vet bills. Every single check that I get from my day job, I put aside money to put into their savings. So next time an emergency happens, because it's not an if, it is a when. Unfortunately, at some point, something is going to happen to your ferrets. There might be some people out there who go through the ferret's entire life, no issues at all, barely have to ever see the vet. I wish that was me. Maybe it will be from now on. I don't even know. It's just one of those things that you don't know. So it's better to be prepared. Thank you to all of my channel members who have stuck around and are supporting my channel. I'm still working on my second ferret care book, so remain patient. I'm finishing that up. It should be out this spring. Anyways, I'll see you guys in my next video. Have a great day.